everyone, and welcome again to the SaaS community channel where we learn from each other how to build successful SaaS. And with me today, I have Laura Brouckman, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly. Fantastic. Laura is a technical leader for Confluent Cloud growth team, and she's here to basically teach us what are growth teams and why we need them and how to build really cool growth teams. So happy to have you here, Laura.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's jump right to it. You're leading a growth team. What is a growth team?
Yeah, so it's kind of helpful, I think, to think of a growth team in contrast to a regular feature or product team. The product teams are always thinking about improving or adding features, making strategic bets for your product, and the growth team is filling in those gaps. So we're focused on incremental learnings and discovering opportunities. So we're often not building features. We're trying to get customers to actually use the existing features, to get more customers to use more features. Um, so we really view the world through funnels. That's also potentially a difference. We're thinking the funnel from sign up to the first major action. In Confluent, it's a cluster creation, but it can be all kinds of things. And when you think about the world through funnels, then it turns into conversion rates, and that's like always going to be the driving goal, is to increase those conversion rates. Yeah, so I guess that's generally what a growth team is. A lot of it is driven through A/B testing, qualitative feedback from user research, and really just being agile and rapid with our iterations. So we're thinking on a week to week basis rather than a quarterly basis.
So that's fantastic. What are the skills you have on the team? Like it sounds like you're an engineer or an
Mhm.
engineering leader now, but you have other engineers. Anything else on the team?
Yeah, so on the team, we have engineers, we have designers, we have a product manager, and we have data science, which is probably the biggest difference between us and a feature team, is that we have that support from data science to analyze experiments that we're running and also to come to us with just general data from the product and help us identify the gaps that we're seeing.
And product marketing are not part of the team. So the product manager kind of interfaces
Mhm.
with the product marketing team.
Yeah, exactly. At our company, it's separate. You could probably have it together, but product marketing uh, does work really closely with us. And there's sort of this growth marketing section of it. So we're the product
Yeah.
growth and there's growth marketing. Their goals is basically like get as many signups as possible. And then we take over from once a person has signed up to get as many, active customers as possible.
So you basically kind of have this handover
Yeah.
motion kind of
Yeah.
thing. You give us the sign up and we will take over from here.
Yeah. And hopefully
Yeah.
quality signups.
Cool. So I can I think you already kind of answered it, but I'm looking for something maybe focused on that. Why do companies really have a growth team? Like, why did Confluent need one? Which kind are the companies that need one and companies that don't need one?
Yeah, I definitely think there's, if you're very early and you don't even have the basic products and features that you want to offer. So when Confluent Cloud was brand new and you could do like one thing on it, there was no reason to have a growth team. There's not enough features there. We need to really double down on getting the value of the product. But I think once you feel confident that your product is valuable, it starts to become more important to look at how can we make our customers realize how valuable our product is and actually get the most out of it. So I would say actually we started our growth team a little bit too early. We started in 2019, and I think we struggled a bit just with not enough customers and not enough feature completeness of some of the cloud offerings. But then 2020 really the team took off, and we were able to start to make real strides as a growth team. So it is
I can see
not for
why I need to have
everybody.
the features because the
Yeah.
goal of the team is to make customers successful. You need them to be successful with something.
Hmm.
But what you said that there were also not enough customers. Do you need a
Hmm.
certain number of customers in order to drive this motion?
You need a certain number of product-led customers. So a lot of times, or at least at Confluent, our initial customers for Confluent Cloud were had their hands held by the sales team. They were really working with a salesperson constantly to get their deployment set up. And it wasn't until we had this end-to-end sort of product-led flow that customers could come into the product and never talk to a salesperson and get a full, production use case set up. So you need enough of those customers. Otherwise, there's just not going to be enough users. If you're going to run an A/B test, you need a certain number of users
Yeah.
to,
So I guess 10 is
yeah,
not enough, right?
10,
But
10 is probably not enough.
100 is probably good. Like by the time I have 100, I can probably get started, or is it still
You
like?
could start there. I mean, like Facebook would say you need a million.
Yeah, that's
we,
what I
we,
was
we,
thinking. Like most of us will never,
yeah,
like, let's be
yeah,
realistic. Those of us with a startup will never have a million, or
yeah,
I don't know, in 20 years. Um, but yeah, I'm wondering, like, it sounds like you almost need like the data scientist to tell you, hey, how
yeah.
many data points do I need before you become useful?
Yeah, I think that is a big thing. Data science can help, and yeah, I think also just distinguishing between sales led customers and product led customers. Like sales led customers probably don't care as much about the little growth hacks that we're doing, whereas product led customers, it does matter a lot. Like that's their only touch point is the product. So once you get more of those, it becomes more and
So
more important.
it's almost like if you're very small, you can invest in hiring salespeople, or you
Yeah.
can invest in your growth team, and it's kind of a strategy decision at that point, which
Hmm.
relays. And then, no matter what way you started, after a while, you'll probably have end up with both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're leading the growth team. Can you talk about kind of the value you brought? What are the big accomplishments that you are super proud that your team really hit?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely metrics related accomplishments that we're really proud of. We have just been hitting our numbers. Like a sales team, we get like numbers to hit each quarter, and it's just so satisfying to hit those numbers. But for me, the biggest accomplishment I would say is actually more of the culture of the team. And I think it's something that's really important with a growth team is that you establish a strong culture. So the two things I'm proud of on our team are these experiment brainstorming sessions that we have. It's just a very collaborative, bottoms up environment. So anyone can propose an experiment to run. Anyone can propose like these improvements from designers, data science, product and engineers. We all are contributing. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is velocity. So um, it can be really tempting to get dragged down in almost start building features. Like that's always our default. Like we just want to go build features. It's so fun, but keeping up with the velocity of experimentation and iteration is so important for a growth team. So last year, I think we launched between like 1 and 2 experiments every week with just 4 engineers. So it was like just constant learnings and constant results coming in. It was really impressive, I guess, to maintain that.
Yeah. Can you share like how many experiments do you have running at any given point in time? Like if I log into
Yeah,
Confluent Cloud today?
it depends. There's probably between 5 and 10 experiments running at any given time. So you might see something different from the person next to you on certain pages.
Yeah, and which is kind of, I think that kind of became the modern user experience. Um, like recently I commented on Twitter that, oh, they had a downvote. And gazillion people are like, oh, you are on the side of the A/B testing that got a downvote. How do I get a downvote? So I think it's definitely something that the world kind of got used to, probably thanks to the 2 billion Facebook users. Everyone's now accustomed
Probably.
that user experience is highly personalized these days. Sometimes it's random.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You mentioned that you're proud of the experiment culture, which I totally get why, because it's so exciting. Is there a specific experiment that you're kind of like, oh, this was a particularly cool one, or even like something like that the result you didn't expect the result to be good, but made like a significant tick in the numbers that the sales teams are tracking?
Yeah. This one's almost silly because it was so small and so obvious in retrospect. But in Confluent Cloud, like a big way to start producing data is to just write, a Java application or a Python app, and we call those clients. And if you went to the Cloud UI, there was a way to generate like a config for your client. It was just very buried. We literally just took that, made it like in the sidebar clients, and our like onboarding activation numbers. I forget what the exact difference onboarding activation, sorry, is that they produced a byte of data. That number just went way up, and it was like, this is embarrassing that it took us, a year of having Confluent Cloud to make that an obvious path. Like that's how every developer wants to onboard. Every developer is like, how do I, get my JavaScript node client working? That's all they want to do. And it was so buried. And so we had basically a nav change, and it had this huge impact.
Did you actually do A/B testing on that, or did you just change it because it was so obvious?
We did an A/B test just to like validate that it was because of that change. And I'd have to look back, but yeah, that was a big impact. And it sort of triggered a series of client related experiments. And I think over the last year, we increased the number of people that were copying the client config from the Cloud UI 3x. So it was a huge area of growth for us.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, if I create a cluster today, it will actually, the moment I click create, it will land me on the client page,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So it's very obvious exactly
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to do now. And I think at some point we even started pre-creating the API key. So I don't have to go somewhere to create the API key. I just get the client page with a pre-created API key, just copy paste it into your app, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we even have like the you can like copy a link to just like download an example client code. So it's like
Yeah. Yeah,
just
things
make it
did
as
get
easy as
way better.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One experiment after another, and life got
Yeah.
significantly better.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
in terms of, like you mentioned, that some things are just super easy and your team is super high velocity, 2 experiments per week. But there must be some things that are engineeringly hard, that are not 2 days and we have a new experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what are those? And also, how do you kind of integrate solving some hard problems with the desire to have very, very fast iterations?
Yeah, definitely. And it's something where as your growth team goes on, like the easy experiments get knocked out first and
Oh,
stay
yeah.
there.
After a year, you have none of them left.
Exactly. Yeah, but there's definitely harder problems, and we sort of group our work into experiments and then what we call big bets. So if we've done a lot of experiments in an area and we think that it could have a big impact, we'll take a big bet, and that will be something that is more like a feature or a larger experiment, something that's going to take longer. So when we take those big bets, we try to have the data through experimentation to back up that it probably is going to be worth it. Um, so it's just balancing those two things. In terms of technical challenges, we also this year we hired some backend and full stack people. I guess I'm technically full stack, but some backend engineers to
You're
help
technically
with
a leader.
some, yeah, what am I? Just some like what we call larger rocks that have just been preventing a whole type of experiment. So one of the rocks that we've always wanted to be able to get past is like being able to reward user behavior with promo codes. So, if you
Yes.
do these things, here's a promo code, and it's all like automatic. So that's like a big investment that we have to do with our backend resourcing to enable it, but we think it will be worth it. And then another big one, which is probably more applicable to really any SaaS company, is we get a lot of data from the UI, like through Segment, just tracking analytics, and then data science does tons of work to classify user or organizations as activated or not activated or been activated with a ton of data. There's all this like different data we have, but there's no way to ingest that back into the UI. So the UI is somewhat dumb when it comes to knowing if a user one time tried KSQL but then churned. Like there's no way to know that. And yeah, there's lots of cool things I think we could do if we had that like that close the loop a bit
And this
more.
is something that you already kind of know how to tackle, and it's just a matter of hiring the engineers who will do it, or is it hard? I can see how it could be hard to get like data from data science. A lot of times appears in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, which will be incredibly hard to integrate with the application. So I was wondering if you guys came up with an approach on even how to go there.
Yeah, it's a mix. Some of the stuff in is in BigQuery, so that makes it much easier. And you can kind of set up. I mean, you could even make it a Kafka app, like a connector back into some database that the Cloud UI can query from. Some of it, like you said, is in a PowerPoint presentation or very ad hoc, so that involves a little more work. But we have been able to start this. We have sort of a proof of concept service working right now that we
And that's
ingest
really
some
about
data.
getting data. It's like a reverse pipeline, right? Getting
Yeah,
data
exactly.
from
Yeah,
BigQuery to the product database.
yeah,
Yeah, I can imagine that it would be fun because so far nobody really treated BigQuery as a production database, but suddenly there is user functionality on top, and the data pipeline is not allowed to break ever, has to be monitored. Yeah, that's
yeah,
almost an org change. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
It's been interesting.
yeah, but as you said, it will really give you those superpowers to much more personalize the application experience, which is yeah. After you pick all the easy rocks, I can totally see why
Yeah.
this is a big deal. So, as terms of like you talked a bit about your team culture, is it different to be an engineer on a growth team, like compared to just I think previously, as you said, you were like a full stack or backend or something like
Mhm.
that. Yeah, how have your life changed since you started working in a growth team?
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset shift in the way that you think about building things. I think being willing to really be aggressive about cutting scope, and sometimes even doing something the wrong way for the sake of a quick experiment, and then rolling it back and doing it the right way. It's something that I think engineers don't normally like to do.
We
Um,
hate rewriting stuff
yeah, so getting used to that has been funny.
because you're also leading engineers now. You actually have to talk them out of what they're used to do. Do you have like
Mhm.
a tip for other engineering leaders talking your engineers into something like, you know, doing works that you know will have to be redone or doing something very manual and taking the hit early to get experiment results?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually haven't had that much of an issue with engineers so far. More so, the designers want to make everything perfect, and we'll be like, "Oh, we're not going to, add that animation or whatever." Um, so it hasn't been too bad. I think something that helps is like that very collaborative, bottoms up feeling. So I think the engineers all know what our goals are, and they're very aligned towards those goals. And a lot of the engineers are on the team either joined Confluent like for the growth team, or they were internal transfers. Like they kind of knew what they were getting into with this. So I think they already came in with like a pretty good mindset. Um,
Yeah, now I'm a bit
yeah.
sad that I didn't take this internal transfer because your team just sounds so much fun. Um, so it sounds like basically because the designers are part of the team and in all the team meetings, it was very easy to explain, hey, we need a design that will take a week to ship.
Mhm.
We need a very like we get that designs can be amazing, but we actually need a design that can ship in a week.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the designers like I mean I think there's a bit of like a shock because both our designers are like incredibly talented, and but they didn't start, I guess, their careers as growth designers. And so there's probably like a month for both of them where they were like, what is happening with this culture? But they're both really in it now, and they're so quick at coming up with like two or three ideas for something. They're always thinking in phases. So yeah, it's been a cool
Yeah.
collaborative thing with
They,
them.
it's exact same thing that I can imagine some of my engineers would go through if you got them to your team. They would need a month to adjust. What do you mean I'm going to ship something that will then have to be rewritten? But yeah, and by the way, it's not that it's any easier to do a design that can ship in a week. It's probably a lot harder to do designs that can ship in a week. It's just a
Yeah,
different way of thinking.
exactly.
Yeah, so I think maybe last question, and it kind of ties back to, I think, the amazing team cultures that you ended up with. Because people sometimes bring the culture with them and they bring habits with them and they also bring skills. And the team also needs their skills and their culture and their habits and everything. So suppose that I have a new product-led growth company, and I right now I'm like, oh my god, I just need my first 10 customers. I'm not even thinking about the 100 that I will need for a growth team. But at some point, I will have 100 for my growth team, and I'll be like, okay, I need a growth team. Let's either move some people over or hire them. Do you have advice on who are the right people that I need for that team?
Yeah. I think the first thing would be like what we were just talking about, someone that wants to build the best possible, well architected system is not going to be a great fit on growth. I think people that want to move quickly, that want to be very agile and like brainstorming ideas constantly is good. I think also caring a lot about user experience and really thinking about the product and the user experience is super important. So even if they're not a front end engineer, people that deeply care about what that experience is like. I guess a bonus would be if they have any background in statistics, at least need to probably get comfortable talking about it. Yeah, and
Why
I
is
guess the
it
last
so
one would be
important? Like you have a data scientists. Why is it so important that engineers will be into statistics?
you don't need to be into it, but you need to speak the language enough that when a data scientist is giving their explanation, which can be kind of in their own language, that you understand what they're talking about. We also often have engineers and product together write experiment retros where you're looking at all the different metrics you've gathered, including conversion rates, significance of results, sample sizes, something called MDE, which is minimum detectable effect. Like there's all these different sort of phrases that you throw around, and being able to comfortably talk about that, it would be nice, but it's also something that you can just pick up as you go.
I'm thinking about like I worked with engineers who used to be like at places like Facebook, and I always in Facebook, even if you're not in the growth team, like everyone cares a lot about growth in this company, and the way I saw a lot of engineers measures their growth and their experiments is that you design an experiment, but you don't give it one metric. You actually give it 30 metrics or 20 metrics. Now, you run the experiment for, let's say, 2 weeks, maybe a month. After a month, no matter what you did, one of these metrics will move up or in the right direction. No matter what, even if your experience did absolutely nothing, because it's Facebook, things happen in the world, stuff moves. And then they pick the metrics that moved and say, hey, I had amazing impact on our product growth. Look at this amazing metric. Does that is that considered being good at statistics or not being good at statistics?
That's considered being amazing at no. Yeah, that is actually something I should have brought this up because it's something that's so tempting. Like, because we also will have multiple conversion rates that we're looking at if it's a larger experiment, and it's so tempting to pick the prettiest, the nicest looking one. You know, say your stats in the best way. The way we try to combat this is for each experiment, we have a set of, we call it the objective doc. So we write out like 1 to 10 questions that we're trying to answer. Like if, do users in the target cohort do X at a higher rate or whatever. And they also correspond to a chart that we can build. And for our retro, we have to answer every single one of those questions. So the retro, like, you can't just decide to answer one question. You have to answer all of them. And we try to keep ourselves honest by putting against the objectives and the questions we're trying to answer up front before you see the data. So that's
Yeah, that's
been our
fantastic. It's
method.
fantastic that you hold yourself up to the standard, because there is always like, as a shareholder at Confluent, you obviously want your experience to be meaningful. Otherwise, you're just changing stuff in the UI without doing anything real. But as a person who wants to, get recognized, promoted, you also want to present yourself. So it's nice that you came up with a methodology to kind of control what things look like. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so you mentioned you doing things rapidly, you are having all those experiments, you're optimizing for fast feedback, fast learning, and yet you keep describing you write an experiment doc, you do an experiment post-mortem. Do
Mhm.
you feel like the process overall is hard? Like, do I have to be a developer who absolutely loves writing in order to join a growth team? Like, or are you okay with, like, how much time does it take to write one of those experiment docs?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And you probably, at least for the way we're running things, like, you shouldn't hate writing docs if you want to join the team. In my experience, though, they take a lot less time than like a traditional one pager would. The objective is pretty simple because oftentimes, in the design session, in the product discussion, like, you already know what the objective is. It's just a matter of writing it down. It's really just like a single page of questions, and sort of the metrics that go with each question. The harder part, the more involved portion, is that retro, where you then take the results and look, not just did we do it, yay we did, or oh no we didn't, but also like, what did we learn, like what can we try to draw like further conclusions from these results that can apply to other experiments, and what should our next steps be. And that does tend to be more involved. I think that is maybe also something to look for in engineers, is people that are interested in that. I find the retros one of the most fun parts of my job, because it's like you have all this data and you're just like trying to uncover like what the data is telling you. So usually the engineer and the product manager sort of jointly own that. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're running toward the close. But I have
Okay.
one more question, if you can, like, quick answer. Um, what is the most surprising thing you've learned about Confluent Cloud users?
Surprising. I'm trying to think. Something that always makes me laugh, and it's just such a small thing, it doesn't matter at all, but a lot of times, we know what our like four most used clients are, we know what our four most used connectors are, and we'll put those somewhere, and then we'll have a little like see all. And so many people, they see Java, Go, whatever, they hit see all, and then they go hit Java. And it's like a shocking amount of people, and I don't know why it makes me laugh so much, but it's like, why?
You don't do it yourself?
Like, they just need to know what all of them
Yeah,
are,
we're
even though they already.
correct. Like, I can
um,
totally see myself clicking it, not because I even plan on using any exotic language in the next 10 years or something. It's just like curiosity. What else is
yeah.
hiding in there?
Yeah. So maybe it's a developer thing, because most of our users are developers. Just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
need to
that's
know.
the developer. Curiosity is a bit of a developer requirement. I think it's
I
a
think
hard job
so.
if you're not curious about something.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Laura, thank you so much for joining us and teaching us all about what an amazing growth team can look like. Um, I'm guessing that your team is hiring. Like, should I put a big link below? Click
Yeah.
here if you want to join an amazing growth team.
Yeah, you totally should. We're hiring for backend and for front end and for design and for product management. So literally all of the roles are open.
Yeah.
Team's growing really fast this year.
Honestly, if I could go back in time to be a product manager, I want to be over there. It just seems like an amazing opportunity. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much for telling us about it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I enjoyed it a lot.